I took a babysitting job for extra cash over winter break. The mother gave me one rule before leaving: never let the kid look directly into the hallway mirror after dark. She didn't explain why, and I didn't ask, because the pay was too good to question. By midnight, I understood exactly why she'd warned me. I was between semesters and needed quick money, so when a woman named Diane posted an ad looking for an overnight sitter for her 7-year-old son, paying almost triple the going rate, I applied immediately without asking too many questions. She interviewed me briefly over the phone, seemed satisfied, and gave me one instruction before handing over the details: never let her son, Caleb, look directly into the antique mirror hanging in the upstairs hallway after dark. She said it quickly, almost embarrassed, like she expected me to laugh. I didn't laugh. Something about her tone made it clear she wasn't joking, even if she couldn't fully explain why. I agreed, assuming it was some harmless parenting quirk, maybe tied to a nightmare Caleb had once had about the mirror. The evening. Caleb was a quiet, well-behaved kid, easy to watch. We had dinner, watched a movie, and around 8 p.m. I started getting him ready for bed. His room was upstairs, directly across from the hallway mirror Diane had mentioned, an old, ornate thing with a slightly warped surface that made reflections look faintly stretched if you stood at certain angles. I made sure Caleb kept his eyes down whenever we passed it, and he did, without any pushback, which struck me as strange for a 7-year-old. When I asked him casually why he avoided looking at it, he just shrugged and said, "Mom says it's not really a mirror at night." I didn't push further. I tucked him in around 8:30 and went downstairs to wait out the rest of the evening. Around 10 p.m. I heard Caleb's door open upstairs and assumed he was coming down for water or to ask about a nightlight. Instead, from the bottom of the stairs, I saw him standing at the top, perfectly still, facing directly toward the hallway mirror. I called his name and told him to go back to bed. He didn't respond, didn't turn toward my voice at all, just stood there staring at his own reflection with an expression I didn't recognize on a normally cheerful kid, flat, unblinking, almost bored. I went up quickly and gently turned him away from the mirror. The moment he lost sight of it, he blinked rapidly, looked confused, and asked me why he was standing in the hallway. He genuinely didn't remember getting up. I put him back to bed, checked on him twice over the next hour, and told myself it was just sleepwalking, something plenty of kids do. Around midnight. I was downstairs texting a friend when I heard Caleb's voice from directly behind me in the living room, calm and clear, asking if I wanted to see something in the mirror. I turned around. Caleb wasn't there. His voice had come from an empty room, yet it had sounded exactly like him, close enough that I would have sworn he was standing right at my shoulder. I went upstairs immediately. Caleb was in his bed, asleep, exactly where I'd left him. But his bedroom door, which I'd left partially open, was now shut completely, and the hallway light, which had been on all evening, was off, the only illumination coming from the pale reflection of moonlight in the mirror itself. I didn't turn that light back on. I stood in the dark hallway for a long moment, deliberately not looking toward the mirror, before quickly getting Caleb's door open and checking on him again. He was fine, still sleeping soundly, undisturbed by any of it. The call to Diane. I called Diane immediately, even though it was late, and told her what had happened: Caleb sleepwalking toward the mirror, his voice coming from an empty room, the light turning off on its own. She was quiet for a moment before telling me the mirror had belonged to her grandmother, and that it had a reputation in the family for showing things that weren't quite accurate reflections after dark, sometimes showing people standing slightly wrong, sometimes showing movement that didn't match what was actually happening in the hallway. She said Caleb had been drawn to it since he was old enough to walk, always calm about it, never scared, which frightened her more than if he'd been afraid. She'd meant to get rid of the mirror years ago and simply never had, telling herself the warning to avoid it after dark was precaution enough. I asked her directly if it was dangerous. She hesitated, then admitted that a similar mirror, from the same set originally owned by her grandmother, had been in her sister's house years earlier, and her sister's daughter had once been found standing in front of it at 3 a.m., in a similar unresponsive state, except that time, when someone finally turned her away from the glass. The little girl's reflection stayed facing forward for several extra seconds before catching up to her actual movement. I didn't sleep at all for the rest of that shift. The rest of the night. I moved a chair in front of Caleb's door for the remainder of the night, staying awake, refusing to let him leave the room again. Around 3 a.m., I heard, faintly from down the hallway, the sound of the mirror's surface rippling slightly, not shattering, not cracking, just a soft, liquid-sounding shift, like something briefly disturbing still water. I didn't go check. I sat with my back against Caleb's door until sunrise, and the sound didn't return. When Diane came home the next morning, exhausted from her trip, I told her I couldn't watch Caleb again unless the mirror was gone. She didn't argue. She said she'd been putting off getting rid of it for years, mostly out of superstition that removing it might upset whatever was using it more than simply avoiding it did. I never went back to that house. Diane texted me a few weeks later, thanking me for the warning I'd reinforced, saying she'd finally had the mirror removed and stored somewhere she wouldn't specify. I still think about Caleb standing at the top of those stairs, staring at his own reflection with an expression that wasn't quite his, and about his voice coming from an empty room, asking if I wanted to see something too. If you're ever babysitting, or staying somewhere unfamiliar, and someone gives you one specific rule about an object in the house, a mirror, a door, anything, please just follow it, even if it sounds irrational. Some warnings exist because someone already learned, the hard way, exactly what happens when you don't.